All right. So I'm going to call the meeting to order. It's 5:30, and it's September 6th, and this is the work session for the City Council in Minnetrista. So first order, I'm just going to do quick introductions and attendance here. I'm Lisa Whalen. I'm the mayor. Council members present are Kathleen Refkin and Ann McGregor. Peter Vickery is absent. We're unclear about Claudia at this point. And then Gary Peters is present. Who's sitting in for our city clerk is Don. Angie Bowl. You're sitting in for Don, or okay. Angie's here. Then we have Jasper Krugel, Brian Grimm, and then Sarah Sansala, our attorney, and then also Chief Falls. So with that, we have a number of items on our agenda. We're going to be discussing our budget, having an update on that. Then we're going to be talking about the MediaCom franchise agreement, and then use of substances in public places, and then at the end, capital bonding lobbyist. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Brian for the budget discussion.
Yep, thanks, Mayor and Council. So, I wanted to just give a quick update on a few things, I guess, that had happened or additional information since the last meeting on August 21st. At that meeting, there seemed to be the consensus for the gross levy that's listed in there of the $6,693,000. It's about that 14.33% increase for the gross levy, which is pretty much what we control. Then I just hit the highlights of those few items that I wanted to inform the council of in the memo. Fiscal disparities is more on the revenue side. I think because our levy didn't go up as much as people's and our values went up higher, we're getting a little less fiscal disparities. I think ultimately it's the program saying, I don't know, whatever, tax more or something, for lack of a, which it's just the way the formula is. Basically, our values for residential outpaced and our tax rate went down and stuff. And I think I noted that in the memo. So that's why we're seeing about $20,000 decrease in fiscal disparities. I projected it going up slightly, so that's where the about 0.5% difference is, as was referenced to the net levy, which is once the fiscal disparities is factored in. The other two items were more on the expenditure side. Those are the City of Mound fire and City of St. Bonnie fire. The original numbers on Mounds were a little less, and then I think through the committee, just communicated that they were going to do some different capital items and one-time items. So that's where you'll see the one-time increase in our amount going up by an additional about $40,000 over what we originally had projected. And obviously, or Kathleen was part of those discussions or part of that committee. And then City of St. Bonifacius had a similar type of item where the original estimates were at about 7% increase. We're actually getting about a 12% now. Their budget is going up a little over 9%, but because we're taking on a higher portion of the budget per the formula, per our values. Again, once again, our valuation is sort of hurting us in a few different areas. Mm-hmm. You can see it's about another $14,000 increase over the original estimate there. So basically on the revenue side, it's about 0.5% to the net levy. We're not looking at changing our gross levy, at least that's not being recommended by staff. And then on the expenditure side is about, coming up on a percent difference, which I guess the recommendation there would be to absorb that in, the projected fund balance is 37% versus 38% at the general fund. But knowing that we still do have the flexibility of the one-time dollars that are coming at year end here for the one-time public safety dollars, as well as how to allocate those or change that a little bit, as well as tracking our projected surplus over the next few months to see if it is even more than the projected 100,000 or positive variance that we're looking at for 2023. So looks like Ann maybe has a question.
Well, I want to go on record with the questions I got from people.
Okay.
So the first question I got was a concern from a resident. I think everybody was okay between the 12 and 14. When they saw the number 15, it got them nervous. So I want to go on record at noting that 15.1 seemed a lot, and they had a lot of questions around that.
Okay, but it's really not much incrementally. I mean, I think every reference in the packet, it's like a $18 a month estimate, for,
And maybe that's what I think you need to go on record saying, something like that, so that's very good. So probably about $18?
yeah, for pretty much that median value home of that $700,000 property, they should see, annual adjustment of $220, which is basically $18 a month roughly, or, still under $20 a month, so.
Okay, all good. Okay, and then the second question had to do with the fire things, and it's why are both Mound and St. Bonnie fire budgets going up by 16% and 12% when inflation is 4%?
Because of the formula.
Formula is a big part, and then as well as City of Mound is looking at doing some,
The City of Mound, the committee decided to increase the budget this year more to cover some capital, get lump buying some gear that they needed and paying outright for a new truck versus just sticking in the budget over the next so many years. So it will go down, not a substantial, it will go down next year.
Okay,
but the increase will probably be less, right?
Yeah.
It's the budget, maybe instead of being a 16%, might be a 8, or I don't want to speak for him or something, but it should be less,
Yeah.
right?
It might even be less than that, but it depends on the.
What Jasper said to me today, I want him to repeat what he said about City of Minnetrista taking up more.
Yeah, so part of the formula that is used in a lot of these fire formulas is valuation of homes, and our valuations are going up more than what the average is. So we're taking on more of a proportion. So if Mound is going up 16%, or what was it? What was the total for Mound?
Mound is now about a 16%.
16% for us. It was like a 14% overall for the budget itself. So as our valuations outpace the average valuation increase of our partners, we're going to take on more proportion of the contract.
And that's because we don't have a fire station of our own. We need to rely on them, and so as that happens, it costs more money.
And the St. Bonnie contract, it hits us more than the Mound.
It
Right,
does,
it does.
I
We're
think-
paying a higher percentage. And then also, the other thing that's happening with St. Bonnie is our values are going like this, and their values are going like this.
Yeah.
So there's that too. And that's why we've been talking about a fire district.
Yeah, I think the interesting part with St. Bonnie's is I think our values are like 80% of the district, but the amount of calls is like 55 to 60%. So with the formula, basically we're taking on almost 69, 70% of St. Bonnie's fire budget.
I think that's important as an answer. Good, all good.
So, yeah, I guess so those were the main items to update, and like I said, in basically the recommendations, and 1 and 2 there at the end were, I guess, seemed to.
So here's my take on it, though, is, again, knowing that we can't raise the budget in December, but we can lower it between the preliminary and the thing. So I think we need to have a couple discussions. One, the fund balance. Do we feel comfortable 37% versus 38%, knowing that we really need to get back to at least that 40%? So, if the further down we go, the more we have to make up next year, the following year. And then we don't know yet in regards to how much we're going to have overage, or So I'm at this point anyway. I would be comfortable with the 15.1%, knowing that we now have 3 more months to work on this and maybe bring it back, because there's other things too that you could do. You could do the fund balance. We might have more overages. So then we can maybe do a little less in CIP. We could use more of the 372 to offset that. I'd rather work on it a little bit more over the next 3 or 4 months, the 3 months, and start out higher and then try and ratchet it down, versus backing ourselves into a corner and now we really don't have anywhere to go.
I agree. I was thinking we leave it at the 15.1 and then try
Right.
to work it down over the next couple months.
And I think we can. I wouldn't be.
It's just the preliminary.
It's just the preliminary. I just don't want to get, say, 14.6, which is where we're at right now, and then say, oh, well, the overage didn't come in where it was, and now we're down to 36% versus
Yeah.
38, or,
And we're leaving the gross levy where it is. The only thing that's changed is the net levy. So nothing's changed as far as what was proposed from the previous meeting, other than we're getting a little less money from that regional program.
right,
So
right.
that's why I guess what I'm almost like.
Well, we're getting less money, but then we're also, there's more costs involved to the fire department.
Correct, yeah, so there's sort of,
So that's what I'm saying, is we would have some flexibility there, because if you remember, we were saying 172,000 setting aside for CIP for, we'll call it public safety, police.
Yeah.
But we could use some of that too to offset that fire, additional
Increase.
fire cost increase. So,
all right. So yeah, so basically what's in the regular packet for the business items is like the gross levy, the 6,693,000, which is basically the gross levy is 14.3, basically up, but the net now, instead of being 14.6, is 15.1, just with that additional county information. So is everyone okay with that? Or?
Yes.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Can I just ask one clarifying question? Because
Okay.
sometimes gross levies and net levies. So do you want the gross levy to remain 14.33, or would you want it to be 15.1?
Oh no,
The
net's the
net,
15.1.
the net is
yeah.
the 15.1.
Yeah.
Yes.
1.1.
So the net is what.
You want the net to be 15.1,
15.1.
and keep it 14.33,
Yes.
and then the fund balance will be 37, projected 37.
would be 38 with the 15.1, right?
No.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah.
Okay, so here's the thing, because there's two different moving
Now I'm
parts.
more confused.
Okay.
Now I am confused. Okay.
So there's two moving parts. So the gross levy's always been at the 14.33%.
Right.
The net was projected to be at 14.6, but that was with the fiscal disparities going up about 8,000. Well, instead it went down 21,000. So basically you're having a 0.5% effect to the net levy. So the net levy, just with that, is going from 14.6 to 15.1 with the last roughly $30,000 in,
Right.
Yep.
Right.
So
In revenue.
in revenue.
Right.
Yeah.
So that still leaves it at 37%.
Yes, because basically the 55, 60,000 in fire costs that we didn't know about before the last meeting is reducing the projected fund balance from 38 to 37.
Okay.
So we would
So-
have to increase the net amount to get off the 37%.
If we wanted to go back to the 38% and cover that 55,000 of fire, we'd have to raise the gross levy by about 55,000.
Another point,
Basically
another-
a point,
another
a percent.
point, yeah,
So the
another
gross
percent.
would be 15.3 and the net would be like 16.1.
Okay.
If you want, so for
But
staff,
that's-
we just
yeah.
took the, or does that
Yeah.
makes, it's sort of two different, basically the expenses went up a bit and the
Revenue
revenue
went
from the regional program went down that we get or whatever, so.
So, if I may, so if you want the projected fund balance to be at 38% projected, you need to move the levy from 14.33 to 15.33, roughly.
Roughly, yeah. And then
So-
in turn, the net would go up, it both would go up about 1% or whatever, so.
Well,
But I think we have
let's
the
leave it at
flexi-
15.1 for now. 0.2% isn't going to be a huge deal. So what we're going to certify to the county is a net levy of 15.1.
Yep. So as the documents are presented in the packet, the gross levy of the 6 million.
6,693.
Yep. Because I think we have enough flexibility with, right now we've got 200,000 to capital and 172 to operations of that one-time police. I mean, if you wanted to, you just would say change the allocation by 55,000.
Right,
you know.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Or we might have the projected surplus be 160,000 versus
Right.
100 once it actually is at year-end in balance, so then you don't even have to change that. I think we have a couple different mitigating factors that I would just leave the levy, and just knowing that, it went from slightly under 15, the net, to slightly over 15 based on just the fiscal
Right.
disparities programs.
And you won't
numbers.
actually know anything until the last meeting of December.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean,
Well,
as far as more final numbers.
We should
I
have more
guess, or-
final by November.
November, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
with the
Okay.
third quarter update, we'll know more, which will be in mid-October, and then even in like November, it can give another update or whatever. So,
Okay.
So
Okay.
generally, so what we'll have to do, Brian and Jasper, is we'll have to have another budget discussion. So we'll have all of the utilities and all of that.
Yep, that'll be, yep,
We'll have
start.
those discussions,
Yeah.
but then we're also going to have maybe our meeting in November, we'll have to have another budget discussion.
I think so on the tax
Okay.
levies. Yeah,
Right,
yeah,
on the tax
information,
levy.
yeah.
That's
A lot of times we don't, if we're pretty comfortable with where we were at, but because of that, so this year we're gonna have to have another budget discussion in November.
You have to do, look at a
Right.
couple of those factors or
Right.
whatever and vary.
Because then we'll have to do a final certification on December 4th,
Yeah,
so.
because I think
okay.
we're fine as is, and we might even be able to achieve that goal of lowering another % or 2 or something.
Yeah,
so.
and I also, so we have to do both. We have to look at the fund balance because I do know that's really important, especially when we're going up for bonding.
Yes.
And so if I really don't want to see that, you know, we have to.
Okay,
Yeah.
so just for knowledge factor, so is there a large difference in our reputation between 37% and 38%?
No, I don't think so. As far as I mean, obviously they like to see, and once we have, even have some more analysis over the next couple months, and when we're going up for bonding, hopefully that surplus will come in even better, where we can actually say, hey, we're looking at being at, and actually at the end of 2023.
See, 40, I've always thought 40 is kind of the magic number.
Yeah, the 40 versus.
You know, 40
Why is, all I want to know, and this is just information, I'm not trying to be a pain.
No.
Why is 40 the magic number?
I don't know. No.
Well, I mean, probably
That's
twofold.
why I'm asking.
Yeah.
I mean, the state auditors recommend between 35 and 50%. That's their guideline. And they want to see that we're following our own policy, and our own policy right now says a minimum of 40%. So those are the two
Oh,
factors
okay,
as
all
far
right.
as
Yeah,
why. So
that's-
40 is sort of between
So
the
we
35 and
actually-
50. So, and I think at year end 2023, we've showed that we're going to be at, well, that was in the regular meeting packet, but we're going to be at like 40 something at the end of 23 still. It's at the end of 24 where we don't know exactly where, based on how we finish for 23 and those type of items. Because I could point you to the bond. It looks like we're projected to be at 44% at the end of 2023, but it's once we get into 24, that's when we're looking at going under that threshold.
Okay, so, all right, so let's take that to the next step. So 44 at the end of 23, now we're into 24. Do we have other places to take money from to make that, by the end of that year, back up to 40?
Well, I think a couple of things are,
Yeah.
the how to allocate the one-time police funds, and then what our actual surplus
Right.
comes in at the end of 23, because we could actually be sitting at 47%
Yeah.
at the end of 23,
23.
and then all of a sudden we're looking at 40% at the end of 24. So
Okay.
And that's the other reason we can wait until November to make that final determination. But I do think it's important to try and hit that 40. And the other thing to keep in mind is, let's just say at the end of 24, it is 37%. That's 3 points. It's 180,000 or more, probably by that time 200,000 to get back to that 40. So because as our budget goes up, that percentage, see,
Yeah.
so
that's part of the big hit
That's part
in
of it.
24 is because our expenditures with the union contracts and all those things
Right.
we've talked about are going up at a much higher level than it has in the last few years. So.
right.
So there's a lot of things working against us. We have a lot of levers to use
So,
too, I think.
question for you then,
or
at
some
our-
at least. Or
At our meeting now, so are you going to bring this back up for the 18th then? Or do we have it, are we going to be doing this?
oh, it's in the
Yes,
packet.
okay.
It's in the packet.
Yeah.
Is it for 15.1?
Yes, it's
Okay,
basically, yep, the resolution in the packet for the
Sorry.
6,693,104 would be the 14.3 gross and the 15.1 net. So as we basically talked about here, so.
Okay.
yeah.
So the fiscal disparities from the county, is that going to keep going down?
No, it
Or
should
keep-
come.
keep
So
getting less?
no, it and I can point to that. So the reason is because our tax rate dropped from like 23 to 19%. But basically, on this projected budget I've got here, our current tax rate's a little over 19. It's going to be just shy of 20%. So as long as I think our tax rates stays the same or goes up, usually our fiscal disparities goes up. But because we had such a drop in our tax rate, it's sort of lower.
And that's because of market value of homes.
Yeah, because our market value went up like 26, 29%. So, because we did a tax levy of 9% last year, but
Right.
it was just when your values go up almost 30%, tax rates still drop quite a bit. Yeah. So so things should normalize next year as far as the fiscal disparities. That hopefully that it shouldn't drop from 158 to 137. It should be 137 to 140 something at least, hopefully, or give or take or whatever. So.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Next, we're going to talk about the MediaCom franchise agreement.
Thank you. I can kick this off just briefly. So we have Sarah here. Bob Vos, I think maybe everybody's met Bob before, but he had another engagement tonight that he couldn't attend. So Sarah's here to kind of fill in on this. So, but franchise agreement, obviously this is something that has been talked about with this council prior to me being here. Somewhat contentious about just build out and things like that. Obviously we had to address that in this contract. One thing I want to make sure is clear, just like a general concept of a franchise agreement. Franchise agreement only addresses video services. So only video, not phone, not broadband. So a small portion now of what people generally consume, and that video service is getting smaller every year.
Oh, yeah.
So, people are basically cutting the cord, not getting cable, using broadband to stream things. So the way I've always been kind of taught is if you have a cable box in your house, that's when you get the franchise fee and you get the PEG fee. So another thing, just briefly about the PEG fee, we're keeping that the same. And really, the franchise fee and the PEG fee are just essentially a pass-through. So the residents pay it. It doesn't cost MediaCom anything. It's just passed on to the residents through MediaCom to the city through these franchise fees. So just some basic concepts about these just to make sure everybody's on the same page. So I'll kick it off to Sarah here to kind of just give a broad background of this.
Sure. So what you have before you is an ordinance. That's how the franchise is constructed. So it's an ordinance that the city council will adopt. And the city did issue a renewed franchise to MediaCom in 2013. So it had a 10-year term. It's up. And at that time, the parties did agree to kind of an automatic extension if MediaCom had substantially complied with the material terms of the franchise. Back in November, they had requested just the automatic extension, and the city did respond basically saying that the city would not extend unless some issues were addressed. And the city notified MediaCom that failed to fully build out and serve the certain areas as required by the franchise. This issue has been subsequently addressed by MediaCom's recent completion of some system expansion, and then also with Midco coming in and expanding its service to the remaining unserved areas in the city. It sounds like from talking with Bob, everybody's covered, with the exception of maybe one household? Or?
One or two, potentially, and they're working on that last mile grant through Hennepin County to get that done. So,
Okay, where?
it is.
I thought we had everybody.
There's one.
Finding more.
I know.
There's one property that I know of for sure. I'm not exactly sure what the address is, but Allie's been working with them. The way that works is the resident has to apply to the grant on behalf of MediaCom or Mid-Continent, and then they get, I think, most of the funding to get this last mile done. So we're about 99.9% covered right now.
Oh, that's too bad we didn't know about that. Okay.
Midco, it's in the MediaCom area. Midco didn't want to do it because it's not close to any of their services. So it's one of the MediaCom kind of outliers, I believe. So, but I think they're working on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
But now if we pull up a map of the old MediaCom area and the Midco, everything else is all covered.
Everything is, and the most important thing is that new developments are covered through the franchise agreement. So if we have a development that occurs in the future, they will be served by at least one for sure. If another, let's say Midco wants to come into that area, they could. So if they wanted to provide broadband services in a future development, they can do that as well. If they provide video services, Midco would have to get a franchise agreement. And that franchise agreement would be essentially identical to the MediaCom
But
one.
MediaCom can't oppose that, so that's kind of
Correct.
one of the parts of the agreement with MediaCom.
So one of the things you said is we can't increase our PEG fees. So how come we can't?
We can.
You can.
We can.
Okay.
If we want to.
So why wouldn't we?
Well,
Pass through to the residents, so, I mean, it's
Makes
not
their bill,
MediaCom paying them, it's
Okay.
the residents, so it's essentially a tax.
Okay.
And I guess city staff, I mean, it's for, you can only use them for certain things.
Right.
Like video equipment that you see here in
Right.
City Hall. So I think city staff determined there was
The-
no need to
the-
increase those fees.
correct. Yeah. So the PEG fee that's projected to be generated would be enough to cover the future expenditures.
But we've also been using it to cover other communications, which I think is allowed as well. So some of Ally's salary, I thought, because it's communications.
I can clarify that. So the franchise fee is used for that. And the
Okay.
franchise fee, there's no
Oh, you're
string.
saying the PEG fee.
The PEG
Okay.
fee can only be used for equipment. The
Okay.
franchise fee, essentially, we can use it for anything we want. It could be for
Okay,
salaries, anything. It's revenue for the city.
okay. Okay, so the PEG fee is only $1.20 per month.
That is correct.
And the
Yes.
franchise fee, what is that? That's through MediaCom has to pay that? Although they pass it on, so.
Yeah. So the subscriber has to pay for it, and I believe it's 5%. That's the maximum that's allowed.
Okay, and have we ever asked them to verify, to prove? I mean, that's been another question, because we don't know how many people there are on their system, how many, are we really getting the correct fees?
I believe we have. I have at another city. They do not share that information.
I know.
So, and they won't share it. It's there's a lot of trust that's involved with this, but there's no way for us to do an audit of their books.
Yeah, they're private.
Yes. So,
Okay, we could do a survey. Somebody say, are you on MediaCom? I know. Okay,
and we can generally make some assumptions by how much revenue we get in, but we're kind of like backing into
Yeah.
the number, assuming, what the average cost of their video service package that they have is,
So the franchise agreement, or this agreement, only pertains to video?
Correct.
Okay, so it doesn't pertain to broadband. So if somebody has broadband and video and phone, and their broadband goes out and they need MediaCom to come in and fix it, we can't have any language in this contract saying you have to get in there within a certain amount of time?
No.
That sucks.
it is. And
I burned a lot of calories over this. I mean, a
walked everywhere.
lot of calories. And then finally, I had a very good conversation with Jasper. It's only taken a year and a half for me to get it that the internet is here and video is here.
Right.
And that's when
This is
he's-
going away, and this is bigger.
And
We
he
can
kept
use
saying
the
it's
internet
going
to
away.
get the video.
Yeah, the go away part. So I went down and looked at our bill. We only have internet with MediaCom.
Right.
And so we don't have their cable box.
Yeah.
And we don't even have their router.
Mm-hmm.
So I personally believe that they should give us that information since we're the city and we're giving them the franchise.
Mhm.
But I guess getting that out of them is close to impossible.
That's correct. I mean, there are regulations that are attached to the franchise ordinance regarding, what information they can share and customer service regulations. But yeah, actually enforcing that is pretty next to impossible. And people that are not happy with MediaCom the best message you can probably send them is to, cancel them and go to Netflix or Dish or whatever and use someone else, because the city's not going to get anywhere with them.
Okay.
Okay, but again, it rubs raw
Mm-hmm.
that we are giving them another contract when, one, we don't get any information. Two, there is nothing in this contract to say they're going to maintain anything, whether it's video or not, maintain anything. And there's no competition for them. It is so awful.
it is. And I will add, we are required to have one of these if they provide video services. So we don't have a choice. So we have
Well,
to
that's
do
a
it.
good addition.
So even if we don't want to do this, we have to eventually come to
Have to have
terms
somebody.
With somebody. Yeah.
with MediaCom
Wait, because they're the only ones.
because they provide the video services.
Well, Verizon's coming.
That's an option, definitely.
Verizon's coming.
Yeah.
And they're very slowly but surely seeping into the city of Minnetrista.
Yeah.
But not video.
But not
But with
video.
broadband.
Yeah, with
But
broadband.
not video.
Mhm.
So we wouldn't get any
Yeah.
of the franchise fees then.
Good point.
So the
So-
city would lose that income.
A little insight.
I think we care.
MediaCom only wanted to do a 5-year extension. I think they kind of see the writing on the wall and the trends. So budgetary reasons, for budgetary reasons, we're anticipating it's going to go down every year to essentially nothing or some very low number. This is a 7-year agreement with a 5-year extension potential if we want to do it. But in 7 years, the market, for video services is unknown. I mean, I
The
think
only question I would have is, do you think the laws might change in 7 years? I mean, I don't know. And would it then be in our best interest to do a 5-year contract with a 5-year extension?
these laws generally don't change very frequently. They're very hard. The FCC regulates a lot of this, and they're a very slow moving
So
agency.
why do you want the 7? Why can't we have 5?
Well, so this is a funny situation. So they wanted 5, we wanted 10.
Why? I thought we had this conversation.
We did. We actually did it at a work
I
session.
burned so many calories.
So,
This guy.
so that was the direction given to staff.
are getting
Was a 10-year agreement. So we proposed the 10, and they wanted 5. We were 7. If they want 5, I don't know if these things are very complex and there's a lot of moving parts. So going back to them and saying 5, that might take another 3 months for them to respond and actually do something. So
And then you might as well start negotiating the renewal.
yeah, exactly. So I don't think there's any risk. If the laws change, then we would likely be required anyway to update our
Yeah,
franchise
pending the law
agreement.
change.
Yeah.
So I think the 7 is safe.
You can also increase the PEG fees at any point during the franchise.
Oh,
Okay,
well, that's-
okay,
Yeah,
That's
so
one
there's
saving
some
grace.
flexibility there.
all right.
All right.
So what I was saying to Jasper too today is, though, if you bring this back, the contract back, put the whole contract in the packet then, so we can see it.
We will.
Okay.
Some light reading.
Yeah, I know.
I know.
Okay, it's
We've
fine.
seen it before. We
Yeah,
had it
we
like
have.
I know.
a year and a half ago.
Yep.
You save us a lot of trouble in these things, but remember, the first year we were here, oh
read a
my
lot
God,
of
we
these
were reading
things.
300 and 400 pages
Yeah,
before we
they
came
were
to every
really
meeting.
packets.
It was a lot of work.
Yeah.
All right, so we're okay with this then?
Are you
Yes.
generally okay with the terms that are
Yeah.
described in
Can
Bob?
I just have one
Yeah.
question I just thought of. Do we have any idea what other cities are charging for the PEG fees?
I don't know what the cap is. There is a cap. I think we're at 50% of it. I think so. It varies. So you have to demonstrate a need for it. So if a city wants to put in a new video system every 5 years, they can demonstrate that. So what I've found is if we reduce it, the bill doesn't necessarily go down. It just gets added to there. So
Yeah.
that was
They just make more money.
No, I just didn't want to be on the lowest end. And let's say, I don't know who else has a franchise fee. Victoria is charging like 25 cents. And that
I
was
would-
more-
I would say
wasn't
we're-
saying we lower it by any means.
yeah. I would say we're probably right around average. But we can maybe do some looking around to see what other communities have. I know some communities don't even use that. That's zero. They don't have an item for PEG. But we can look around. I can get some information for the next meeting or share it.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Then an ordinance regarding the use of substances in public places. Again, Sarah?
Sure, I can take this one. As of August 1st, the use of cannabis products is legal in the state of Minnesota. And that law did not place any restrictions on the use of cannabis products in public places such as city parks, streets, sidewalks, parking lots. So right now, the city does prohibit the consumption of liquor and beer in public places such as city parks and streets. And basically, the city does not prohibit smoking or vaping in city parks or streets. So city staff is proposing that the city council adopt an ordinance that would prohibit the use of cannabis products in public places such as city parks, public ways, and city parking areas. And this would include, which is something you can talk about, the prohibition of the use of edible cannabis products such as THC-infused gummies and beverages. So that's included right now. That's something for you to discuss if that's something you want to include. And then because the use of cannabis products includes active smoking, city staff thought that if you're prohibiting the smoking of cannabis, you probably should prohibit the smoking of other things such as cigarettes, cigars, and vaping devices. And then it does clarify that public sidewalks and trails are part of a definition of a public way, so they would be prohibited So the council right now needs to decide if this is appropriate or if public waste should be scaled back, and then if any of these products should be scaled back. And then we'll bring an ordinance back to the next meeting for adoption.
Well, I'm going to start out. I'm not a smoker, and I think anybody that smokes, I hope you guys don't smoke, is kind of stupid. But anyhow, but I'm not in favor of adding smoking in parks or I mean, that way, I mean, you think about it. Let's just say we have an employee at City Hall that smokes, and they want to take a 5-minute, or they want to take their 10-minute break. Where are they going to be able to go? Because that's a public street. This is a public property. I mean, they're going to have to drive, who knows where. That's just one issue. But I think prohibiting edible or smoking cannabis or anything like that, because it alters your state of mind. It alters your perception, and it can alter your thinking and all of that. Okay, and it's same as liquor or beer. Wherever we say that's not, you can't do it there, then we should do that for edible or smoking or whatever, cannabis or THC, whatever. But smoking a cigarette or a cigar, I think, should be left alone. That's just my point.
Can we add like an asterisk that says unless an approved designated area, so employees can smoke outside of certain doors? Is that an option to?
But then what
could.
you can, but you're also saying somebody wants to spend the day in the park with their family, they can't smoke there. I mean, is that really smoke a cigarette?
It also has to be enforced. I don't think anyone's going to call the police because someone's smoking in a park.
But if the police see them smoking a cigarette and it's in you might have to say it's not allowed.
Madam Mayor and Council.
Don't get me wrong, I don't think smoking is good, but
I certainly understand where you're coming from. From an enforcement standpoint, it would be far easier if we just banned smoking as well, because then at a distance, it doesn't matter if you're smoking a cigarette or a joint, we can see that. So it gives us the right to go up there and take a look. That doesn't mean everybody that's smoking is going to get a ticket. I mean, many of these things would be resolved just through a simple conversation, especially in the beginning. So from that standpoint, I kind of like not allowing it because it makes it very easy to see somebody smoking something and go there. But on the other hand, I certainly see your point. So I wouldn't necessarily be opposed. It just would require us to kind of sort it out.
I mean, there is a substantial difference between using THC or cannabis products or whatever versus smoking a cigarette. Again, it's because, and the reason we prohibit liquor and beer is because of the potential to get intoxicated. And again, it alters your mood, it alters your perception, it alters your actions, and it can, have negative effects. Whereas smoking a cigarette, actually not being able to smoke your cigarette if you are addicted, which many people are, could probably have a negative effect. So I don't know. I just think we need to think about that. I'm absolutely in favor of limiting or disallowing edible cannabis products as well, or smoking those type of products.
Yeah, I can agree with what you're saying. I wonder how many people still smoke in the parks.
I know it's not that many, but
But you're saying that you don't, because technically it's outside and technically.
right.
I guess.
I mean, if
So-
they can't smoke on a sidewalk, on a trail, on a city street, on a county street, on a county trail. I mean, like I'm thinking here, for instance, if somebody wanted to go out and smoke a cigarette, I'm not sure where they would go. They'd have to drive somewhere. They would have to drive down to the WRA park, which is private. That's where they'd have to smoke. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, well, let's rip that apart. Let's just rip it apart. So I agree with what Chief Falls is saying, that granted, if somebody wants to smoke marijuana, they can just wrap it up like a cigarette. And they can smoke it.
Yeah.
And it's up to, then the police have to decide whether
You can
or not-
usually smell the difference. There's a substantial difference in smell, number
There
one.
is. There is.
There
Okay,
is.
so-
I think one point that is worthy of pointing out, I think it was mentioned earlier, is the council would have the option to allow for a designated smoking area. So for example, at City Hall or Public Works or wherever, whoever we're worried about excluding, we certainly don't want to make city operations much more difficult as a result of this. I think where I was going with that is it does make it a much simpler process because you can simply see somebody smoking something and it gives us the right to go over there. Whereas, you certainly could still do that, and I agree, you can smell the difference. I know this topic has been on the news a lot lately, and a lot of cities are just taking that same approach. There's no smoking, drinking, smoking of anything, cannabis, regular cigarettes in a public park. And I think the premise behind it is the secondhand smoke piece is apparently harmful, obviously,
It is.
to folks. And so that's kind of what they're saying. But I understand where you're going with that.
Well, one thing about the current cannabis law is that you can't consume cannabis around young people, I believe. I don't know what the actual language is, but you can't have like secondhand smoke from cannabis or anything like, so like in a
But when
park.
if you were in a car, for instance, and, we know secondhand smoke is terrible no matter what it is, but they couldn't smoke in their car in the parking lot, for instance, but I'm,
What? You know what? Okay.
yeah.
If you want to add smoking back in and let that be allowable, we can always change this again.
Right.
So go ahead.
Yeah.
Put
So-
it back in.
Yeah, I think we should just do the cannabis for right now.
That's fine.
And-
Because I'm going to tell you right now, I don't think you're ever going to know if anybody's eating edible cannabis unless
I
they
know.
show effect after the fact.
Yeah, right.
I don't think it's gonna happen.
To put this in perspective, I don't think this is going to be a huge issue anyway. So
Yeah.
Right.
I agree, you can change it at any point
Yeah.
anyway. So.
Okay. You want it back in, put it in.
Thank you. And again, don't get me wrong. I think smoking is terrible. So,
But I see
but
your
I do
point.
understand
I see your point.
certain freedoms
Yeah,
for people. So,
yeah,
all right.
I hear you.
So
Okay.
we'll just strike the language that includes smoking
Okay.
cigarettes or cigars.
Right.
How
Everything
about
else.
vaping?
Vaping.
But
Yeah. It's the same thing, isn't
Okay,
it?
yeah.
Can you vape THC products?
You can. There are THC cartridges, which we deal with fairly often.
So then I think
So it'd have to be specific to exclude the
Yeah.
THC cartridge.
Yeah.
So it gets a little complicated, but
Yeah.
we investigate things all the time, so we'll figure it out.
It is, but it's easily solved because ordinances can be changed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Fairly quickly.
Yeah.
So go down the path, and if Chief Hawks come back and says this is really a pain, and we're running into one thing after another, we'll change it.
Yeah.
I don't think this is going to be a huge concern
Okay,
anyway,
whatever.
so it's just good to have something in place.
Right.
Okay.
And like you said, if we see the effects and we go, okay,
There you
we
go.
know you've been smoking or eating or something.
technically don't you have to catch them in the act? Because is it illegal to be high?
It
Well, if you're
actually
not
is.
driving, no.
So
I thought it was illegal to be intoxicated in public spaces.
No, not everywhere.
Oh,
Some cities have public intoxication ordinances.
well, we could do that.
The act of consuming it is in some places,
Okay.
but just being intoxicated is not.
Okay, well,
Which is
so,
probably good. 'Cause
so to Ann's point then, if we have a problem and we feel that people are intoxicated or high, then we can come back and do another ordinance saying that it's illegal to be intoxicated or high in public spaces.
Right, and we have other mechanisms to deal with that if it rises to the level that it's a problem. So,
Okay. Just let us know.
Okay,
not a problem.
all right.
fun meeting today.
And we haven't even been
I
smoking.
know.
Um,
All
all
right.
right. What else? Then we have capital bonding lobbyist discussion.
Yeah, so just circling back, obviously we had Anne, I forget her last name. Linchensky.
Who knows how to pronounce
Anne
it?
Linchensky. Brian's got it down.
Gosh.
Anne Linchensky from Lockridge came and presented about potentially lobbying on the city's behalf for state bonding bills, state policies, things like that. We wanted to have a conversation to close the loop to see if there was any interest in potentially moving that along further. Potentially for, we have some options. If we do want to do it, we can do an RFP, which I would recommend just to keep it open with everybody. Or if the timing's not right, we can table it. We can talk about it, keep it kind of in our back pocket if we think we want to do it in the future. It does have a fairly substantial financial implication at the Lock Ridge is at $40,000 a year. That would have a levy impact. Some proportion of that would be covered by enterprise funds, some by, general levy. So just want to get some feedback from the group, some direction on how you'd like to proceed. If we'd like to proceed with an RFP, I can take that direction. If we want to table it, think about it, maybe talk about it a little bit more in the future, that's something we can do as well. So looking for direction. We didn't really have any time to digest the presentation and
I'm
the
pretty
discussion.
definite about it. I think with the way Minnetrista is growing, you're going to have to do it. It's just a matter of time. And so my thought process is build it into next year's budget, whether it's RFP, whatever it is that you want to do. Build it into next year's budget, and we do it in 2025.
For 24 for 20,
And-
24 for 25,
Yeah.
during our planning process next year.
Yep.
Yes.
That's fine.
Is that what you're thinking? Okay. I'll- There we go.
All right.
Thank you.
That's everything. Wow. We're good. So with that, we can be adjourned.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. And all those in favor signify with aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0. 2 absent. All right.
There we go.
Sounds good.
We will be back at 7.
Woohoo.